Lake of Kalandra brings huge changes to the Path of Exile economy. First off, Harvest is going to become an alternative crafting bench, a system that more closely resembles what we already have. And furthermore, there's a lot of changes in regards to Exalted and Divine Orbs, but more about that towards the end of the video. For now, I want to focus on the Harvest changes, since I think a lot of people want to know how to craft in Path of Exile, and a lot of people have struggled to get into it. Harvest is going to be a great gateway to that now. In a lot of ways, it always was, but unfortunately there was a fair bit of busy work that came with that. In fact, this was something that Chris himself highlighted during the reveal. And now, a lot of that busy work has been cut away. You'll choose monsters based on the energy types, which you can think of as yellow, blue, or purple. Once you start using the system, you'll pretty intuitively remember which crafts you need and which energy colors that you want from them. Since you don't really have to remember names and can just go by colors, this shouldn't be too bad. And much like the crafting bench, as long as you have requisite currency, you can now just spam the crafts over and over again. Furthermore, you can do it at your leisure. If you don't want to craft with Harvest, that's totally fine. You can just sell all the Life Force and never worry about it again. If you want to do all the Harvest crafting, you can buy Life Force from other players and, well, do all the Harvest crafting. Unlike the traditional crafting bench, though, the value of crafts is not going to be Chaos, Divines, and Exalts. Instead, it's going to be different Life Force values, but that doesn't mean those can't be seen as an analogy for Chaos. Most likely, the value of each energy type will be based off of the most useful and valuable crafts. And most used here is referring to a trade setting. If you're in SSF, your most used craft is going to be whatever you happen to need at the time. For everyone else, though, the value is going to normalize around what a majority of the players are doing. So let's say you want to use a res swap, but using the same Life Force for Reforged Chaos is the best way to craft certain high-demand items. You're probably going to end up paying more for your res swap, just like how, in a league where Chaos is more valuable, you pay more for a few of the bench crafts. But since these are fairly universal now, you can think of these price increases and decreases as much more similar to a bench craft, where an Exalt, Divine, or Chaos will vary during the league and vary league to league, rather than the huge swings that we saw with specific Harvest crafts that could be so rare that many players haven't seen them since Harvest League released way back in 3.11 around 2 years ago. It's also going to be a lot easier to save up your Life Force and do it later. Let's say you know that you need a Cluster Jewel, but you don't need it right now. Currently, what you'd want to do is spam on a Cluster Jewel anyway. You'd have to buy the base and you'd have to craft on it, since it's use it or lose it. Now you can just save up your Life Force, and when you decide, alright, time to get that good Cluster Jewel, you can start spending and roll whatever you want. So a lot of the base level crafting is going to become very accessible, and this is because much of that crafting went to waste. People could have used it, but chose not to because it was too annoying. What this also means is you can interact with Harvest now in a way similar to a lot of the other crafting systems. Before, if I wanted to do a lot of Harvest crafting, my only real option was to buy the crafts via TFT to do 10, 20, or 30 in a row. I mean, sure, I could farm my own Harvest, but it was very random, and the use it or lose it made it incredibly tedious. Whereas now, if I want to craft a specific thing, that's going to be easy. All I have to do is wait till my Life Force builds up and craft that specific thing. Another very important change that's going to affect the high end without affecting the low end very much is the change to the Exalt crafts. Things like Augment Fizz or Augment Chaos, because they're being modified to function more like Ashling, where it's remove a random modifier, add a Chaos modifier, or remove a random modifier, add a Fizz modifier. And much like Ashling, this can be used to make very powerful items if it respects metamods. If it doesn't respect metamods, I suspect the value here is going to be a little bit more mixed, since you're not going to be able to safely use them on anything. There's always going to be that chance that it blows up the one other mod the item absolutely critically needs. So if you've wanted to get into crafting for a while, and you've been procrastinating because learning felt too expensive, now might just be the time to do it. I don't really know exactly how much Harvest is going to cost. It's kind of impossible to predict prices in a normal league, never mind 3.19. But from a learning perspective, if you're willing to open up Craft of Exile or PoEDB, and really start looking at what the mods on an item are, what can roll, and which tags govern them, you'll be able to make some pretty solid items far easier than you were able to before, since you'll always have access to the crafts that you need. A good example of this is, people often ask me, how do you roll so many repeater clusters for your Cast on Crit Forbidden Right build? And the answer is, I used Reforged Caster. There were very few caster tagged modifiers on a projectile cluster. Most things were attack or speed. So by spamming Reforged Caster, I was able to easily hit repeater, and then I could hope for things like Shrieking Bolts or Eye to Eye as the other notable. And if you take the time to dive into the crafting system a little bit, I think you'll be able to find a lot of cool interactions just like this in the upcoming league. In short, don't be afraid to craft. Experiment with Harvest and see how it goes. You might be surprised at how effective it is. Now, I did also want to talk about the economy more broadly, and what I think some of the implications of the Divine Change are. Before I do though, a quick reminder that if you're interested in League Start builds, get subscribed, as I'm going to be posting my League Starter builds probably Monday, depends on when POB updates. As soon as possible, and if POB doesn't update by Monday, it's going to come out regardless, and there's just going to be a whole lot of caveats. If you found this helpful so far, be sure to leave a like, as that's a great way to help me out completely for free. Or, if you want to support the channel more directly, you can do so by supporting on Patreon or becoming a channel member. A special thanks to all the patrons and channel members who are supporting today, and more about how you can do that at the end of the video. For now, let's start talking about the economy. This part was almost something I didn't want to talk about, because I feel like a lot of the discussion around it isn't super productive right now. There are just way too many factors we don't know. Sure, you can make wild predictions like Exalt will be 6C, or Divines will be 200C, or unique items are only going to be sold in mirrors. But that's all they are. Wild predictions, speculation. We're not going to know what it is until we actually play and experience the economy. So what I'm trying to say is, take everything I'm about to say with a huge grain of salt, but don't panic. It's not going to be that bad. The first week, yes, absolute chaos in terms of pricing. People are going to list things in Exalts, people are going to list things in Divines, people are going to list things in Chaos, people are going to undersell items, people are going to oversell items, people aren't going to sell items. After that's over, things are going to normalize, and I think we're going to end up with a system where people sell a lot of items in Chaos, some items in Exalts, and some items in Divines. And I do also think that Exalts are kind of being undervalued by a lot of the population right now. If their only use was going to be to slam items, then they wouldn't be a super valuable currency. However, they're also going to be used in a lot of bench crafts, and with the increased value in Divines, here's the question. Let's say you spend 1 Exalt to put increased fizz damage on your weapon, and you really think this is going to be your forever weapon. Do you spend a Divine to reroll the prefix to get a better roll? Or do you spend another Exalt to reroll the crafted prefix to get a better roll? In a lot of cases, you're going to be spending more Exalts on bench crafts, and more bench crafts will cost Exalts in Chaos, specifically the ones that used to cost Divines. I do expect that Exalts will be worth less than Divines from now on, but I don't expect them to be worthless. Another very important side effect of a change is it's quite likely that dropped uniques will have more value, so you're going to want to show a lot more unique items on your filter, because right now, there's no real difference between a low roll and a high roll unique in many cases. Part of that is unique items are just way too common. So unless enough people are using a unique to corrupt them, there really isn't a difference between a minimum and a maximum roll in terms of a price. Or if there is a difference, that price difference is a couple chaos. I remember seeing a terrible rolled Ashes of the Stars for 50 Exalts early on in 3.18. And a near perfect one was only 52. Because it only cost about 2 Exalts and Divines to hit that near-perfect roll. But if we translate that over to 3.19, well, now that near-perfect one could be 200 or 300 Divines. But the bottom roll one might only be 35. It'll cost a lot more to roll it near-perfect, so naturally, the lower end, the worst rolled ones, will sell for a bit less. People are going to say, I'll save up and buy a better one. And the near-perfect ones will probably sell for close to exorbitant amounts, far more than the item should actually be worth, since people tend to overvalue perfection. And what this means for you is, if there's a unique item that's actually getting used, that has rolls that matter, make sure to show them on your filter. Pick them up. You might be surprised at how valuable some of them end up being, especially the ones that are perfect rolled. But of course, this is again speculation. If uniques end up being so common that the difference between a bottom and top roll is 2C, but it's still probably not worth showing on your filter. This is why I say that a lot of the discussions right now aren't super productive because we just don't know the answer. If anything though, I'm excited for the change. It's super interesting to me that GGG is willing to even touch a system so integral to the economy that's existed for such a long time. I don't think trade in Path of Exile is perfect, and I don't think the economy in Path of Exile is perfect, but it's definitely the best video game economy I've ever experienced. And if you're wondering, yes, but what if something catastrophically goes wrong as a result of this change? What if there are just way too few divines and everything collapses? Don't worry. Remember, Chris has said multiple times that the Path of Exile economy is his #1 priority, more so than server stability. So come hell or high water, come rollbacks, come league restarts, the economy will be fixed. And if Chris finds out that the change is truly detrimental to the game, then it'll be reversed quickly. That said, don't be too hasty to judge the change. When something's different or new, it's always uncomfortable, and you have to fight through that initial discomfort, because if you do, you might find out it is ultimately better. For now though, I only have one question. Do you plan to do harvest crafting in 3.19? Let me know some of your thoughts down in the comments below. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Your support helps keep me independent and allows me to turn down things like sketchy mobile game sponsorships. You can do so for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you want to support me completely for free, then you can join the community by hopping into my Discord, link below. If you want more content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts. It's a place that I use to review games, ramble my way through video essays, and a lot more. Or of course, you can just click the suggested video in the card right now. I hope you learned something today, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.